Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Reynold, for introducing me. Like Reynold said, my name is Nafimane Hamukoshi. I'm a first year student at the University of Namibia, and I met Reynold 2 years back during one of the sustainable development goals that he came to run at our school. So earlier this year, I attended a climate change summit, a national youth summit that took place in Make Your Hotel. They changed the name. I'm usually more familiar with Safari Hotel, but then since now it's Make Your Hotel, it's difficult. Okay, their theme was empowering youth through climate change, but then climate change now and the urgent call to action. That's the theme I've come up with today. This is just a layout of what I'm going to talk about. And like I said, their theme was empowering youth for climate change. So we have the National Youth Climate Change Summit. In a nutshell, what it really entailed, what it was really about, and how I was involved in the National Youth Summit. And then we have the IPCC and the UNFCCC, which is the IPCC stands for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and UNFCCC stands for United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And then on behalf of Reinhold, I was facilitating the thematic area of renewable energy and generation. And then we have the NDCs, which is the National Determined Contributions, that was adapted and was given to the Deputy Minister of Environment in Namibia. So the climate change conference, like their theme said, was empowering youth through climate change action, is because the reason why they had to lobby a lot of young people from different regions is because most of these conferences and events on climate change or other areas usually only take place in Namibia and not giving equal opportunities to other people in other regions. So what happened was they got 60 delegates from all the 14 regions of Namibia to represent their regions and also to come up with solutions to combat climate change. Climate, I think we are all familiar with the definition of climate change. I just put it there because I wanted to make an emphasis or to clear the confusion between the IPCC and the UNFCCC, because according to my observation at the youth conference, people really did not grasp the idea of IPCC and UNFCCC. So the IPCC and the UNFCCC have the same definition when it comes to climate change. The only difference is the IPCC focuses on like the scientific methods, the research that has to be done, and the information they pass it down or they give it to the UNFCCC, because the IPCC was developed by the United Nations framework. And then the United Nations framework is the one that receives the information from the IPCC, and then it gives it to policymakers and then to international organizations that are assisting in the fight to combat climate change. And what happens is, an example is the Paris Agreement, where all our leaders attended and agreed to the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions to combat climate change, from 2 degrees to 1.5 Celsius. So the thematic group that I was facilitating, like I said, on behalf of Reinhold, was renewable energy sources and energy access and generation. So what we were really focusing on was the electric cars that we can use, or carpooling, which is when people use public transport together so that it avoids traffic congestion, and it also reduces the amount of gases that are the amount of gas that comes from cars that is spread in the atmosphere, to also combat climate change. So one thing we also picked up is that the government does not understand that access to energy is very important for social and economic reasons, because we had a government official who was sitting with us, but then didn't really understand the whole idea of climate change. He actually thought, I don't know if he thought it was a waste of time because he does not deal in that sector, but then we at least managed to explain to him why climate change is important. And if we do not, like the 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, the climate change is there for a reason, because all these goals are interlinked. And when you forget one goal, it means that you cannot resolve the issue of climate change, because climate change also affects poverty, climate change also affects inequalities, climate change also affects infrastructures and all that. Because now if climate change is there, we'll have to resort to either adaptive measures or mitigative measures. And adaptive measures is us adapting to the climate when it changes, and mitigating is when we have to reduce, like I mentioned earlier, from 2 Celsius to 1.5 Celsius. And we decided to go with the mitigative way, because how many times will we adapt to climate changing? That's what we asked ourselves. And then mitigating is easier, because now we will have to reduce the climate change from 2 Celsius to 1.5 Celsius. And then every region presented on the issues they face in their regions. And I just divided them into two parts, which is the northern region and the southern region. And then majority of the people in the northern region rely on small scale subsistence farming, but then due to floods, they are mostly affected, and this leads to food insecurities. This leads to so many negative, it has a negative impact. And my main focus was with the Oshikoto region, because that's where I was facilitating also, which recorded in 2022 during the fire season. It recorded a large burnt area, resulting in a loss of livestock and environmental destruction. And some people mentioned that a lot of people depend on their livestock to sell, to make an income and to support their families, and for their kids to also go to school. But because of climate change, that had to happen, and a lot of them continued with the poverty, the generational poverty continued to be within the families. And then these are the issues that are faced in the southern regions, which is a reduction in rainfall. And they also mentioned one thing that I took as a highlight, is they mentioned that they struggle with agricultural activities, especially when it comes to the rainfall, because there's always a reduction, which means the agricultural activities cannot continue in that region because water is scarce, and people are not able to continue with agricultural activities due to water scarcity. And the national determined contribution, which I mentioned earlier, which happened at the Paris Agreement. So all countries, Namibia has set ambitious goals to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 91% by 2030. But then one thing that I highlighted and I spoke at the panel is that we, the youth, are not being engaged with organizations that have to do with conservancies, climate change, because we do not understand what climate change is and what the impact of climate change can be. And it mostly has a negative impact. And that's why most of my Saturdays I always sacrifice them to go and clean the community, especially in Ombili and Babylon or Kahanja Park. That's where we mainly focus with weekend. I wanted to put it in the presentation, but it was a struggle because I'm not a technical person. And also another thing is I took part in the Recon Africa protest, and we are really glad with what is happening with Recon Africa. And also, whenever I walk in the street or whenever I see someone that throws something on the ground, I always shout to them, no, pick it up. It's not right. That, especially when it's plastic. And yeah, I think, and That's my favorite quote, which says, you cannot change the whole world, but the little difference you make in someone's life can be greater than you think. And this can also be applied to the environment, because small actions such as reducing your carbon footprint, recycling, and conserving water can have a big impact on the environment. By making small changes in our daily lives, we can help to reduce our impact on the environment and contribute to a more sustainable future. And what can we do as young people? It has to start with us. It has to start with you by picking, whenever you are drinking something in a bottle, you don't throw it there. Take the bottle along and take it home and maybe throw it in the bin. If there's a bin that is near you, throw it there. That's where it starts from. It starts from us. And with that, I would like to thank you for the opportunity and having me tonight. Any questions?
Is there maybe a comment for the impact of the staff? I have started to, let's say, explain the side. And one thing that we experience here is that the winds have picked up quite a bit over the last few years. Whether that's climate change related or not, that's maybe a full effect of level is a lot of it.
Yes, Mr. John.
John, I think that's a very short piece. When you think about what climate change we are,
I think what Andreas just said about a windier environment relates a lot to what we see in terms of international stuff about climate change, where the face of climate change for me is these intense fires, these just insanely brutal fires that are destroying huge areas and wiping out whole towns like we saw in Hawaii and so on. So wind, I think, kind of fuels that and dries things out more and then makes the fires more intense. And that's something which me as an environmental scientist, we were always talking about, yeah, well, the temperature's going to go up and the precipitation's going to go down, but we never thought, jeepers, fire is going to be the thing which is really in our face a lot. And I think the Northern Hemisphere has really felt that, and maybe it's coming to us as well. Anyway, on to what I really wanted to say was I'm pleased to see pictures of bicycles in your presentation. Because, we all think about renewable energy. Oh, we're going to have wind turbines and solar panels, but we all drive our flippin' cars. And okay, so some of those cars can be changed to e-vehicles, but why do we not think about using a common, simple, decent bicycle more? Now, I'm a mad cyclist. I love cycling. I try and use the bicycle wherever I can as an alternative to the car. But I think a bicycle is a really much better alternative to any vehicle. It doesn't require a lithium battery. It doesn't require a whole lot of stuff which we need to dig out of the earth. So I think cycling and public transport, which is pedestrian and cycling friendly, would be a much more effective way to kind of try and reduce our fossil fuel consumption in cities. And I see small steps being taken towards that in Windhoek, where we're introducing a few cycle paths and the municipality saying, yes, well, we're doing that. I don't think it's anywhere near enough, but I really think that cycling should be supported more and promoted more as a means of kind of energy, fossil fuel free transport. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nafimane.